And we are live. Welcome, mystery, thriller, and true crime fans. I'm your on air host and author, Sarah DeVello, and I am so excited to welcome tonight former Army sniper, undercover FBI informant, and author Joe Moore, here to give us the inside scoop on his brand new book, White Robes and Broken Badges. Joe, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Thank you, Sarah. So from 2007 to 2017, I worked for the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, and I was essentially a confidential human source. I was recruited by the FBI to infiltrate multiple KKK organizations to conduct what the FBI called assessments regarding terrorist activities in these organizations.
Wow. Well, Joe, your book is chilling to my bones because it is 100% true and because of the personal risk that you took to yourself to go into these terrifying and very real places where dangerous people are plotting dangerous things. In fact, you helped to thwart an assassination attempt against President Barack Obama. You are going into dens of danger where people are literally plotting assassinations, a second civil war, to plant fear and terrorism, acts of terrorism. And you detail all of that so bravely. And I can't wait to talk to you about it and to take everybody's questions. So I just want to welcome everyone. We are broadcasting live to 7 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So wherever you're watching with us today, you're in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday. And as you know, we're going to give you the inside scoop on a brand new, fascinating book. So if you have any questions for Joe about this book, about his time undercover with the KKK, about anything at all, just get it going in the comments, and I will get them right over to him. Now, Joe, we did have some questions submitted to in advance, so I want to be sure to get to those as well. So let's kick off first from Teresa, and she wants to know was your time in the Army helped prepare? How did your time in the Army help prepare you for your time as an undercover FBI informant?
I started out in the infantry. I was a machine gunner, a radio operator. And then I was recruited to go into an elite portion of the infantry called recon platoon. And recon platoon teaches us how to gather information on the battlefield and survive in a battlefield. And then I was recruited to become an Army sniper and eventually became the sniper section leader in that elite recon platoon. So as a sniper section leader, I taught snipers how to gather information, to report information, intelligence, and that's essentially the sniper's first job on the battlefield. Then the survival skills, the things that we learn how to survive in combat, and the ability to assess a situation and develop multiple options of action in order to fulfill the mission. So to answer your question, there were a lot of skills that were developed that I would actually teach to other snipers in order to gather intelligence, develop multiple courses of action, and find the most successful action and fulfill the mission.
Now, Joe, one of the ways that it also helped you was that you had a deep knowledge about guns, about weaponry, that allowed you to immediately establish, and because of your career in the armed services and your work as a sniper, to immediately establish respect, to earn the respect of these men in the Ku Klux Klan who were testing you to see if you were first worthy to join their ranks, and then to be, really an active part of them. So you were able to draw on that, not only to impress them with your gun, with your knowledge of weaponry, but also I was so fascinated when you first are going into these really dangerous, homes, which are more like fortresses with metal reinforced doors. I mean, these guys are literally ready for a war. I loved hearing about how your time as a sniper, you were counting the steps you took to get to the doorway, whether you were turning left, whether you were turning right, noticing in your own words, as you said, things that other people wouldn't. Tell us about that. Had you always been a kid who just noticed everything, or were you sort of oblivious and then that the Army trained you? Tell us about that. I was fascinated.
Well, I should perhaps give my mother some credit here. She's OCD. But I appreciate that. I was the one private in basic training who didn't have his bunk turned over because I followed instructions. In any case,
Okay, I like it.
the ability to gather information is important, but being able to gather information without people recognizing that that's what you're doing is also important. So blending into the battlefield, blending into the scenery around you is a sort of camouflage that we develop on multiple levels. A lot of people see us in ghillie suits, but we have a lot of other techniques and tradecraft that we utilize in order to be successful in gathering information and essentially being very aware of information that may prove very useful in the future.
Well, it certainly proved very useful, and it was fascinating to literally be in your to walk a mile or a chapter or some pages literally in your shoes. Just absolutely fascinating. Sharon is joining us from YouTube saying hi, Joe and Sarah. Hi, Sharon. So good to see you pop up. Sharon's one of our Mavens regulars. Randy's joining us from YouTube. Randy, also a Mavens member. Hey, Randy. He wants to know, Joe, between Army sniper and FBI informant, which did you find more exciting / stressful? Great question, Randy.
Two different worlds. One world, as a sniper, you're operating in overseas and you have some resources, but you may be further out than those resources can get to you. And essentially, if you're in that situation, you may be in what we call a permissible environment or non-permissible environment. So the rules of engagement regarding those different environments allow you to know how close you want to get to the enemy and sort of dictates your role on the battlefield to fulfill your commander's intent. When I was undercover, there were no instructions. There was no guidance. I essentially had to develop, well, my first operation, it was sink or swim. Either I would gather information or I would be found out and die. The second operation, I actually developed a process to analyze the organization I was infiltrating and use that to become the person that they desired in order to get to the level where the information I was seeking was available. So I essentially crawl, walk, ran in the first one. And then the second one, I was able to utilize my military background to approach it from a much more strategic, operational, and tactically sound approach.
Now, Joe, one of the things that I found surprising was how surprised and impressed the FBI was at how quickly you were able to infiltrate and gain the trust of these very high-ranking members of the KKK. They had expected that maybe it would take months, but you were able to in one visit get in this very high-ranking guy's house, into his fortress, see his guns. As you said, guys like that, sharing their gun collection is a very big act of trust, of welcoming. And they couldn't believe how quickly you were able to do that. What do you think was the key to being able to gain that trust?
As a sniper, we study our enemy meticulously, and we almost get into the minds of the enemy. And in the first operation where I sort of became a tutor of the leader. I'm sorry, a student of the leader.
Yeah.
I sort of built him up to himself without him knowing it. I knew that he desired to be a leader based on statements he was making, based on his actions, people calling him. And I was able to pull from details within his own home that were points of pride for him. And then I was able to expound upon that and sort of ingratiate myself to him and become the student that perhaps he wanted.
Fascinating. I mean, yeah, I think you even shared, that you would get into a mindset while driving to these meetings, these assignations. I mean, some of them are really terrifying. Driving to a remote location. I mean, the guy's house was scary enough with the metal door, the reinforced door, so that even in, the most advanced weaponry would not be able to penetrate his fortress. He's literally preparing for attack, for battle,
Yeah.
but also driving to the middle of the woods, where in a place near a swamp where that bodies are being dumped out so that the alligators and other creatures can, eat them so that they leave no trail. And you're heading out into the woods to meet these dangerous men. I mean, was your blood pumping? Was your, adrenaline racing? Were you thinking, I might not make it out of these woods?
Every day. So when I was in the Army and we would go overseas, deploy somewhere, you tell yourself, I'm prepared to not come back. And we would have a recording. I made a recording for my oldest son to sort of hear my voice. And then when I went undercover for the FBI, I made recordings for my wife and children so that they would have something to hear my voice, and I would be able to give them the last, perhaps, hug through my voice recording. And a day at the office for me, for example, I went into a meeting and I literally walked in the back door and there's 12 guys standing around with guns. We're all standing on plastic. There's plastic on the walls. I've got 2 recording devices on me, and the leader hands me a t-shirt and says, change your shirt while wearing the shirt today.
Yeah. That was one question I had, Joe. What did the device look like? Was it like in your ear? Was it taped to your chest? Where was the device on your person, and how big was it?
So I'm forbidden from going into detail about some of these devices. However, I can tell you that there was a wire that was essentially on my chest in this one scenario, and it was jacked into a little processing unit. And I always made sure that my t-shirts were a little longer than any wire I might be wearing. Just one of those things that I was conscientious about with regards to my history as a sniper, little details. So when I pulled that t-shirt off, I was able to unjack the wire at the same time in one motion. And then when I laid it down, the t-shirt was long enough to cover the wire. And then the leader picked up the shirt, folded the shirt, and handed it back to me.
God, that is so stressful. That would be a time where I would be thinking, this might be it. I might not get out of this, because I kept thinking, what if they, what if he gets wet or gets splashed or they make him change his shirt? And then I got to the chapter where that happened because I couldn't quite picture how it worked. And it was like, oh, I was sweating. Like I would literally have to put the book down and take a break, because I think obviously I'm a voracious reader. All of us here are voracious readers. And most of the books that we read are, fiction or true crime by the investigator, but you're the guy who's on the ground going in here to do the work and then telling us the work. I mean, this is just such an extraordinary opportunity to speak with you, an American hero. Randy saying much Much respect, sir. Yes,
I
Randy.
appreciate that. And I should probably say that in many of these situations, I had to be prepared to shoot it out. However, that wasn't my mission. My mission was to gather information. So at every point, I would always try to find a way to gather the information and de-escalate any use of force situation.
But you were mentally prepared if it came to that you may have to shoot it out.
Absolutely. There have been many situations where guns were drawn. I thought that was going to be the day that I didn't come home.
Yeah, which is a very hard way to live. And actually, you share that from your career as an Army sniper, you got PTSD, as most snipers do, and that you were able to face that challenge head on, which I also appreciated your courage and in your transparency in addressing that.
And that's something that we have to admit to ourselves. We have to be able to accept that so that we can then learn how to manage it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because I've had the pleasure of interviewing another sniper as well, who Brandon Webb, who was the a sniper for the Navy SEALs for 20 years, and then became a teacher and created the Navy SEAL sniper course. And we also talked about his PTSD and the tools that he uses, including yoga, mindfulness, meditation. Do you do any of those things, Joe?
Yes, and I practice the 4-7-8 breathing technique constantly.
I do that too.
Yes.
I do that too. It's very calming.
I think that many people would benefit from 4-7-8. And for those that don't know what that means, it's breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, and then take 8 seconds to breathe out. This essentially reverses the cascade of chemicals and hormones that your endocrine system dumps into your body and causes a cascade of panic.
Thank you for sharing that tool, Joe. Jane, welcome to the conversation, joining us from Facebook. She wants to know, Joe, will you be writing any more books? Yeah, so tell us about that.
I have been asked this question many times. Right now, I'm focused on fulfilling this book and getting the information out. It's not just a project of writing a book for me, it's a project of informing the public. So the interest to write another book is there, and people are standing by for me to say, yes, let's go. However, I have my hands full with getting this information out to the public. Writing a book is an enormous project if you're going to do it right. And I want to be able to give the necessary focus to another project if that does occur.
Because, and as you said, that you are informing the public. I didn't know that there was this assassination attempt against President Barack Obama. I had no idea. I was shocked. And when I was reading about the planning of it, these guys, forming an L attack. Yes. And Joe, can you tell us what that is?
So when you look at a vehicle, you have the broadside of the vehicle where the passengers have one plane between you and the passenger, that being the door. And then you have the direction of travel of a vehicle. The front of it tells you what direction it's going in. So the L ambush essentially cuts off the direction of travel while maximizing the access to the target from the broadside. And that's essentially the basic function of an L ambush.
Yeah, I didn't know. I did not know that term. I didn't know anything about it. So as I was reading them planning this attack, studying the videos of how President Obama's motorcade went, how many vehicles, what number in the procession he was, how many people were armed, especially having just seen this assassination attempt against former President Trump. It was I think it hit harder at home, having just witnessed this very real assassination attempt a few weeks ago. Now knowing about this one, I mean, this is really crazy. So I commend your, your commitment to informing the public, and I've learned a lot from reading this book.
Yes. The purpose of doing that is to inform people that these organizations are prepared to engage in high levels of violence, not just one-offs, not just drive-bys, but very high level, coordinated, perhaps somewhat sophisticated levels of violence in order to fulfill their ideology.
Yeah, because that's another level of commitment, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the level that the depth of their hatred and the commitment to their mission, a mission which, Joe, you had to take an oath in sign, to not just repeat the words, but sign in blood. I mean, it's really an intense process. Tell us about that.
The oath signing of what they call the blood oath, and it is exactly what it says, occurs during what they call naturalization process, which is the secret clanning of a new member. And this blood oath, you put all of your biographical information on it. You answer some questions in order to essentially agree that you want to be support the right race and protect the information of the KKK. All of the extreme questions that you can imagine a Klan member would probably ask in order to allow you to be part of an organization. Then you get to the point where you have to write your social security number down. And it's not writing the number down that they necessarily care about. It's how much time you take to do it.
Wow. It's really, I mean, wow. Joe, oh, sorry, go ahead.
In these ceremonies, there have been people killed as a result of their actions or inactions. And when I went operational, there was one quite recently.
Do you feel that it was because the person did not answer the questions quickly or thoroughly or something enough?
I think they panicked because they weren't able to keep their role, perhaps, under wraps. They weren't wrong person for the wrong job. And it's unfortunate they had to lose their life as a process.
Yeah. Wow. You guys, I want to pause here and remind you that the book is out now. So whether you're watching with us on Facebook or on YouTube, here is the link where you can order White Robes and Broken Badges from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore in Houston, Texas. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. So here is that link, and please do click and order to read this incredible, brave, courageous story by Joe. His story, his true story of successfully infiltrating the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, as an FBI informant, drawing on his background as a real life Army sniper. The courage that Joe has is literally mind-boggling. I mean, it's hard to process how incredible and how brave the story is and how amazing it is. So here is that link, and you don't have to believe me. Brad Meltzer, who is the #1 New York Times bestselling author, had these words to share about White Robes and Broken Badges, and I'm going to pop them all up so we can read them together. He says, White Robes and Broken Badges is a gut punch of a book that takes you inside the Ku Klux Klan and shows the true underbelly of the American dream. Riveting, enthralling, and downright terrifying. This is one you should not miss. I have goosebumps because I couldn't have said it better myself. Congratulations on that bit of praise. Joe was also recently featured on NPR. Alan wants to know, Joe, do you think there are a lot more close calls than the public is aware of with these sinister plots?
Fortunately, no. The plots that do occur, often the agency that is responsible for it, they like to take the credit for stopping something serious. The plot that I stopped was roiled in perhaps a lot of issues that I am going to have to discuss in the proper setting with the proper people. So we essentially say that the FBI, as far as I know, handled it in accordance with their guidelines. But there is more to the story. However, there are a lot of people that talk about it. There are a lot of people that do things in furtherance of their idea to do something. And that's why you need human intelligence. We have outstanding signals intelligence, electronic intelligence, but you have to have somebody on the ground to assess the situation for context, to sort of evaluate, do these people have the means to do this? Will they have the opportunity to do this? And are they doing things in furtherance of this action? So fortunately, they don't really, the people that discuss this sort of thing and sort of gather material to do this stuff, they don't find the support that sort of overrides their connection to their community. They may own a home, they may have children. So they need to find the motivation to override all of their connections to their own lives. And that is why these organizations are so dangerous, because the individual has often been seen as the most dangerous element in current issues regarding terrorism, because they say the lone wolf is something that they fear enormously. However, it's the organizations that are able to provide the sort of pack mentality and feed off of one another's courage that I am more concerned about.
Because I think one thing that surprised me, or maybe not, was that these guys do have families. They have wives, they have children. You went to barbecues with them. The kids are off playing with guns, little pretend toy guns. The wives stay very separate. It's a very
They're chauvinistic.
What's that?
They're chauvinistic.
They're chauvinistic. The women stay to themselves off to the side. There's a lot of deference. There's a lot of, it's a male dominated culture. The women very, very quiet, very separate. But I mean, these are not lone wolves, the Unabomber in a cabin off the grid by himself in, Montana or wherever he was. These are family men in outside of towns.
Many of these people are highly educated, highly skilled, well-resourced, and intelligent. So you take that versus the shooter in Pennsylvania, an entirely different situation. So when these people decide to become kinetic, they're essentially sold that they're going to lose everything anyway. So when they decide to do something, there's no turning back. I have seen situations where people got down the road to doing something dangerous, and then they got cold feet and turned back. And then I've seen people sort of say goodbye to their families and try to go kinetic. So that's why you have to have the undercover operative, we'll say, to sort of attach themselves to the situation, not only to protect the target, but general public safety. Because if these people don't reach their target, they may decide that they're going to take it out on the general community at large. And we have to be prepared to stop that.
Wow. Randy saying, thank you for being with us tonight. It was great to hear your story. It brought back many memories of my time as a police officer. Randy, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service, and I understand what he means.
Sharon saying, I am speechless about what you have told us. It's something I could never imagine. Thank you for sharing with us. Sharon, same. I could never have imagined this. Never. Last question, Joe. What was the most surprising thing to you that you saw or learned in your time undercover with the KKK?
The existence of the invisible empire in the shadows, and
Mm.
perhaps the infiltration of law enforcement by these organizations.
And tell us what you mean by that.
Approximately 155 years ago, the KKK was referred to as the Invisible Empire by General Robert E. Lee. And that is where their sort of nickname came from, the Invisible Empire. So what that means is that they establish a sort of pseudo-government structure in order to take over local, county, and state government, and eventually national government. And they sort of try to act as puppet masters or managers of power. And they do this similar to criminal organizations or organized crime in other countries, or perhaps highly infiltrated areas of this country. But there's a significant difference. In criminal organizations, it's about money. And all of the arrangements revolve around money. With the Invisible Empire / KKK and other similar organizations that the KKK has sort of evolved into, it's not about money, it's about ideology. So there's an enormous sort of integrity within those secret organizations that you don't have in criminal organizations, where each criminal is trying to get more money from the other. Here, they're all brethren and they're trying to help each other get up.
Yeah, and I was surprised too. They call each other brother. Brother Joe, brother Bicky. I didn't know. I mean, I learned so much. But yes, strengthening that feeling of brotherhood. And I think you're exactly right. The ideology is scary because people will do certain things for money and power, but when it comes to ideology, there's a different level of sacrifice.
Right. Their entire existence, their soul is centered around the ideology. And one more thing I'd like to say about ideology, and that is that I have to remind people that the ideology birthed the KKK. The KKK did not birth the ideology. So it continues despite the KKK or as a result of the KKK. And we see that in these other organizations that I sort of saw the birthing of in my investigations.
Wow. Joe, it has been such an honor and such a privilege to interview you and to be able to read this powerful, deeply powerful, eye-opening, shocking, chilling book. I want to remind everyone that the book is available now, White Robes and Broken Badges. So here it is available from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. Whether you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, please do click pre-order and help. Let's help get the word out about this American Heroes book. Joe, thank you so much for being with us tonight, and thank you for writing this book. It has been my honor and my privilege.
And I appreciate all of your watchers.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, sir. All right, y'all, that is a wrap for us. I'll be back at the top of the hour with Isabella Maldonado and Jeffrey Deaver. Go get a snack, get a drink, come back and join us.